Billionaire's daughter was paralyzed, until a single dad walked in and said, "Let me help her." The grand marble lobby of Evercrest Children's Rehabilitation Center gleamed under the soft afternoon light, but inside, it felt cold to Grace. Seated in her wheelchair, she stared blankly through the floor-to-ceiling windows at the garden below, a place she once ran through barefoot, long before the accident. Grace Winslow was only 8 years old, but the world knew her name. The daughter of tech billionaire Thomas Winslow, she had once danced in gala halls, splashed in yacht pools, and twirled across private tennis courts. But that life ended 3 months ago, when a drunk driver ran a red light. Her mother died instantly. Grace survived, but paralyzed from the waist down. Thomas did everything money could do. Specialists from Switzerland. Stem cell consultations in Tokyo. Private therapists who charged more per hour than most made in a week. But none of it reached Grace's heart. She didn't speak. Didn't smile. Didn't try. And then came a man with no credentials, no suit, and no impressive resume. Just a crumpled flannel shirt, a tired face, and a little girl clinging to his leg. His name was Daniel Cole. A single dad and part-time mechanic who'd lost his wife to cancer 2 years ago. He wasn't supposed to be there, he'd simply come to fix a broken generator behind the rehab center. But fate, it seems, doesn't care for protocols. While waiting at the front desk, his daughter Lily spotted Grace in the hallway. Without hesitation, she walked over to her and said the words no adult had dared to, "Wanna race me in your cool chair?" Everyone gasped. The nurses froze. But Grace, for the first time in months, blinked in surprise. Her lips twitched. And then, a small, almost invisible nod. They raced. Down the hallway, Lily running ahead, giggling. Grace's wheels spun faster than they ever had, her fingers trembling, eyes wide with something close to joy. She lost, of course, but when she reached the end of the hallway, she was breathless. Not from exertion, but from feeling alive again. Thomas Winslow, who had watched the whole thing from around the corner, felt something crack open in his chest. All his money. All his efforts. And it took a child's innocence, and a father with nothing, to reach his daughter. The next day, Daniel came back. Not as a mechanic, but as a visitor. He brought Lily again, and a beat-up guitar slung over his shoulder. "I heard Grace used to love music," he said awkwardly. "Thought maybe I could play her something." Thomas was skeptical. The therapists advised against disruption. But something about Daniel's quiet steadiness, and Grace's hopeful glance, made him nod. Daniel played a lullaby. Then a silly country song. Then a soft, aching melody that made Grace close her eyes and breathe deeper than she had in weeks. And so began the strangest therapy Grace ever received. Daniel showed up every week. Sometimes with music, sometimes with crafts, sometimes just to sit and talk. Lily, always by his side, became Grace's shadow. They painted rocks, fed birds, made paper boats and floated them in the therapy pool. Daniel never pushed Grace to talk. He simply treated her like any other kid. One rainy afternoon, Grace finally spoke. Just one word. Again, she whispered, after Daniel finished a story about a squirrel that stole his sandwich. That word broke a dam. Within days, Grace was chatting, softly, cautiously, but chatting. Laughing. Asking for stories. Requesting songs. But Thomas wasn't the only one noticing. The head physician called Daniel into his office. "We appreciate your help, Mr. Cole," he said, fingers steepled. "But you're not a licensed therapist. We can't continue allowing unsupervised visits." Daniel nodded slowly. "I understand." But as he stood to leave, Thomas entered. "He stays," he said firmly. "Whatever he's doing is working. My daughter's living again." Thomas offered to put Daniel on a payroll, fund his training, buy him a house, anything. But Daniel shook his head. "I'm not here for money," he said. "I'm here because I know what it feels like to watch someone you love fade away. And I promised myself, if I could ever stop that for someone else, I would." That night, Thomas stood by Grace's bed as she fell asleep. Her hand clutched a crayon drawing Lily had made, 3 stick figures under a tree. "Our new family," it said in scrawled letters. The next few months were a quiet miracle. Grace began therapy again, this time with purpose. She still couldn't walk, but her upper body grew stronger. She started attending group sessions, even helping younger patients paint murals on the center's walls. She laughed more. Sang sometimes. She and Lily became inseparable. Then, one afternoon, during a community talent show at the center, Grace wheeled onto the stage. "Hi," she said into the mic, her voice clear and bright. "This is for someone who helped me remember who I am." Daniel sat in the audience, stunned, as she sang a song he'd written for Lily years ago. Her voice was fragile, but beautiful. It filled the room with something that felt like light. People cried. Thomas did, too. After the show, Daniel stood awkwardly near the exit, unsure what to say. That's when Grace wheeled up to him, smiling wide. "You didn't just help me heal," she said. "You gave me hope." Daniel knelt down, his eyes wet. "You did the hard part, kiddo. I just showed up." "Sometimes," she said softly, "that's everything." Years later, that moment would be replayed on talk shows, featured in books, even adapted into a film. But the real story, the true heart of it, lived in the quiet moments. The hand-holding. The inside jokes. The way Lily and Grace built a fort out of pillows and declared it their no sad zone. The way Thomas started joining them for Sunday picnics and learning how to be a father again. Not a provider, not a businessman, but a dad. Eventually, Grace did walk again, aided by braces and sheer determination. Her first steps were broadcast across news channels. But when asked what truly healed her, she always said the same thing. It wasn't the therapy. Or the doctors. It was kindness. A mechanic with no degrees. A girl who treated me like a friend. They gave me my life back. Today, Grace runs a foundation that brings creative emotional support to children in recovery, inspired by Daniel and Lily. Thomas funds it. Daniel consults. And Lily, now a teenager, helps design programs for kids like her, who understand that love, not money, heals the deepest wounds. Because sometimes, the most powerful kind of help doesn't come from experts or millionaires, but from a single dad who simply walks in and says, "Let me help." And in doing so, changes everything.